want to go into the details of it. We all listen to these situations and we read about them in the press across Europe. These are no regular times. These are extraordinary times for Europe and for its regions. It was mentioned before by the President how much the terrorist attacks and the terrifying terrorist attacks across Europe have really hurt the population, have created a sense of insecurity within a continent that has been in peace for 60 years. So in Manchester or in London, so many people lost their lives. And this is really incredible in the Europe of peace we are living in. The rule of law as well has been, in recent times, by some member states, devalued to some respect. Solidarity is also a big question. Europe, and I believe I agree with what has been said by the President before, Europe has a responsibility to retain peace in Europe and beyond as a global player. So this is an important moment for Europe to seize all opportunities and try to restructure itself into what it would be, this peace dream for the future. Particular relevant challenges for the Mediterranean basin, as it was also announced, is the still persistent, unbalanced economic development. Unbalanced. The youth unemployment is still hard in the Mediterranean areas, despite the raise of employment numbers across Europe. The ongoing migration crisis, which has aggravated the situation recently in Italy, of course, it's something which is very important and is there to stay. So the voice of Europe is very important as to how this will be tackled on an immediate basis. So these extraordinary times, they have been accompanied by a turbulent political environment. The Brexit vote in the UK, the Eurosceptic anti-democratic movements that are taking place, the election of Donald Trump in the United States on a populist platform are not good news. On the flip side of that, we did have some good news. In France, with the election of Mr. Macron, which really emphatically defeated the right-wing politician Mrs. Marine Le Pen, the Norbert Hofer candidate in Austria was defeated, and that was a populist card he was playing. Same thing for Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. So we do prove that at European level, citizens actually prove they want to avoid nationalistic movements. And that's good news. That's good news for Europe. And that's important for us to say this. But it all means that what? That Europe needs to reinvent itself. It cannot be business as usual any longer. It needs to respond to this threat of populism specifically. And we need to adapt to those new challenges that were mentioned before. So, to do that, both Europe and CPMR, we have tried what we call a reflection period on the future of Europe. It all started with a document, the white paper, that the President of the European Commission launched in March about the future of Europe, suggesting 5 possible scenarios. Now, the good thing was that they were scenarios and not something to be imposed to anyone. The flip side, again, of it was that these scenarios weren't particularly appealing. So we in CPMR, we felt that one of these scenarios in particular was hiding a little bit of a threat for our cohesion policy, since one of them suggested that if Europe is to do better with focusing on less, then should cohesion policy be one of these policies where the European Union should deal with? Or should this policy be addressed at national level? We in CPMR have always been against any nationalization of the cohesion policy, because we do think this is a European policy. Economic, social and territorial cohesion is a European priority and needs to be addressed through cohesion policy at European Union level. So that was a bit of a vague attack on our dear policy, and we mentioned that in our various press releases. Then there were 5 reflection papers that they followed the white paper on a sectoral basis, which were drafted by the different responsible commissioners. One of them, the social dimension. That was a better paper. Again, scenarios were proposed to that one. It was a better paper because it was making a specific and quite good analysis of the disparities in Europe. So that met a little bit the arguments we are using on the existing disparities for which cohesion policy should be there and care for. However, we do disagree with 2 out of the 3 scenarios, which is important, because we think that the translation of not using the cohesion instruments in place for serving the scenarios is again an attack. We need to be able to really support, through cohesion policy to the European Social Fund, these types of disparities. So the non-mention of existing instruments make it difficult for us to accept those types of scenarios. A better paper, Harnessing Globalization, that was really the document where regions, and was the document really that we were expecting at least to be really about regions, regions were mentioned as such, and empowering regions was the sentence across the document. So the disparities and the way to fight globalization was by empowering regions. And that was fundamentally very, very important for us, because that's a radical change in tone between what the white paper was saying of Juncker and what the Harnessing Globalization paper is saying. So there we find our place, and the role of regions was mentioned really across the board. The other papers, I'm not going to stay long. It was definitely on issues which are more at national level, the defense policy or the economic and monetary union. But it's important for us to know, ahead of the debate on the EU budget, because those types of priorities will have to find their way within the future multi-financial framework, within the future EU budget. So those are the types of new priorities where we need to cater for within the next financial framework. And that's important for us, for obvious reasons, of course. Because the Brexit will create a hole, as it was proposed. I think that was the exact wording of Commissioner for Budget at the Cohesion Forum in the EU budget. So we have a hole in the budget and a whole new priorities to be catered for. So this is for us important to know, because our cohesion policy needs to find its place, not because it's going to pay regions, but because unless it's there, we won't be able to really deal with economic, social and territorial cohesion, which is part of our treaties, which is part of our principles. So this is important for us to know. And it is important for us to know that the Brexit will force the EU to issue a whole new mission statement. And we need to find ourselves in this mission statement. To find ourselves through the cohesion policy, but also through the role of the regions for all other policies, including fight terrorism or including migration, for that matter. So the last paper, and I think Nicholas later on will present a bit more of the cohesion bit of this paper on the EU budget, that was launched by the Budget Commissioner. That was quite an important document, I think. I invite you to read it. It's not difficult to understand. We are making analysis of that anyway, and we already have one in our blog. So it looks like more like a blueprint about